Hi, I'm making this video today because I thought it would be fun to go a little in depth and talk about how I made this video, the Zorthelheb and Claire video. Um, Even though I realize that this isn't the most impressive video, um, I think it'd still be fun to talk about it because I enjoy talking about is like the more technical side of things and how I went from like the concept of the video to like the final product. And even if I realize that I'm not really doing much like educating here on like how to educate people on how to make this sort of content. I still think it'd be fun to at least talk about it and just maybe in the future I can rewatch this for myself and just be like, oh, that's funny, like how I used to do things. Because admittedly, I I do things in a very unorthodox and weird way. And I just think it'd be fun to talk about how I made this video and how it started, and just go step by step and how I made it. I guess before we start, though, I should probably mention who Zorthelheb and Claire are for people who don't already know. Um, every year, well, not every year. I've only done it for 2 years, but in 2019, I did my first art fight, and I know most of my characters that year I felt were kind of gimmicky that year, and so whenever I did uh art fight the next year in 2020 or yeah in 2020, um I thought I'd make some new characters, and I mean that's kind of basically what Zorthelheb and Claire are. They're just my characters that I made for art fight in 2020. And incidentally, after creating them, doing all the art and getting art from other people, I ended up really liking the characters. And so now they're just kind of like permanent characters outside of art fight that I don't want to call my OCs, but I guess by definition Zorthelheb and Claire are my OCs, I guess. Um but yeah, I guess on screen I can show some of the art that I made for art fight that year. This drawing right here, hopefully I put it on screen, is the first drawing I made of Zorthelheb and Claire, and it's still probably honestly one of my favorites of them. I don't know why. I think it's something about the way I drew the shapes, colored it, whatever. I don't know. It just looks most appealing to me visually. Um, at least a favorite art of the characters that I've done. And that's technically the first drawing of them that I've done. But before that, there was actually, I guess, the sketchbook drawing that I did, my sketchbook, where Zorthelheb had teeth, which is, I'm glad I didn't keep those teeth, but they're a solid part of his design, because even before that sketchbook drawing, there I guess this is technically the original art for Zorthelheb and Claire. The first time I conceptualized them, I guess, is when I was playing Gartic Phone one night with friends, and I made this drawing, and this is technically isn't the first drawing. It was Zorthelheb and Claire. Um, but yeah, so I went from that Gartic Phone drawing to Art Fight 2020 when I needed a new character to just making the characters, and then now here we are, and Zorthelheb and Claire are characters that I'm going to dedicate myself more to outside of Art Fight. That's their origin story, I guess. To start off, yeah, I made the video in Photoshop and Premiere, which is kind of what I mean by doing things in a really unorthodox and weird way, because I think that most people would probably use an actual like program dedicated to animating things, but you'll see in a second that the way I did things. To start off, I guess in Premiere though, I can scrub the playhead over a little bit. But yeah. So far, I mean, if you look at the timeline, you can kind of tell I I made everything has kind of been composited together in Premiere. Everything they see on the screen is just made up of the different things on these layers. So yeah, like right here, this layer, this is the bedroom in the background, right? Right here, this green box, these are the frames of Claire sleeping, and then this frame right here is, I put this frame over the entire piece, which is just the overlay that darkens everything to make it look like it's taken at nighttime. And That's that's pretty basic and understandable. But the way I drew these frames was actually entirely in Photoshop. I maybe this is I don't think this is the right way of doing things, but everything that I drew was drawn frame by frame in Photoshop, exported as individual PNGs, and then imported into Premiere, if that makes sense. You can see here that I have some of the frames highlighted. But yeah, there's this drawing of the bedroom. There's these frames of Claire and the blanket surrounding her. And these are just the layer groups, and within those layer groups are the individual like cycling frames. So there's Claire frame 1, which I label, which is just her like just sleeping. There's frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, and you can see the flickering kind of as I switch between those. And it's the same thing for the blanket. Each one aligns with each frame of Claire, so and yeah, that's basically how I did it. Everything is just kind of I do the first frame, which is just by itself, like the line art for that. And then I'd just trace over that original line art and then color it in each time. Yeah, it's a little tedious, and it's definitely not the most proficient, I guess, effective way to do things, but it's how I do it. I've done every thing that I've done for Art Fight last year, or rather, I just realized I got my dates wrong. My first year of Art Fight was in 2020, and then my second year of Art Fight was in 2021. So this year, 2021, this summer, last summer, whatever, I don't know. Whenever I did things for Art Fight and I animated a few things, it was all done this way, right? I draw each frame individually and then put it into Premiere. I'm not familiar with other programs where maybe doing this would be kind of easier, or it's just all localized within one thing where I would have to like draw it in Photoshop and bring it to Premiere. I don't know how this stuff works. Uh, I don't know. It's how I do things. But yeah. Anyways, so for example, Claire here. There's the 4 frames of Claire in the blanket, and then what I would do, I would export those again out of Photoshop into Premiere, and then I would make a subsequence in Premiere where those drawings just loop over and over again within like some sort of interval that I set up. It just does that, and then I put this like subsequence into the main sequence in the timeline. And that's it's basically how I do things, and that's kind of how this whole piece is assembled together. Even certain stuff like the monster that appears is again just the frames that I drew in Photoshop, but it's brought into Premiere and it's just animated. I just animate the movement up here in the left in a certain way. And yeah, some things are separate, so the monster in this frame, in this part, is just a monster rising, but then you can see right here, this is the arms coming out separately. And yeah, that's basically that's not that's not it, but that's for the most part that's how most of this is assembled. And yeah, this part right here where the monster is kind of zoomed in on and the background kind of fades out is really, it's just stuff that I did in Premiere, just effects, enlarging things, distorting, whatever. That sound right there, for all of the sounds in this video, they're all just taken off freesound.org, which is, it's just a public library of just sound effects that people upload and you can just take them for free. And yeah, that's how this whole piece is. That's where I got most of the sound for this from. And this sound right here is Zorthelhead popping in that whatever sound that is. Yeah, that's just from freesound.org, and I think I adjusted some like pitch shifter thing to make it sound a little deeper, but that's it really. The next part, this part right here where the camera quote unquote moves and Zorthelhead comes into frame and the background moves and all that, that's done manually. I think the proper the word for nerds would be parallax, which I think is the correct word. where stuff in the foreground kind of, as the camera shifts, stuff in the foreground doesn't move as much, but the background moves a lot. I guess that's the parallax effect I did here was all done manually. If I go in here, you can see that on the left, yeah, that's all just keyframe manually. Yeah. You can also notice sort of that in the background actually at the beginning gets kind of blurred out and stuff, and the camera blur effect fades away too as the camera, again, quote unquote camera, moves along. And yeah, I don't really know if there is a way to not do this manually that makes it look better. To my eyes, this looks pretty good. It sells the illusion pretty well of like camera movement, but yeah, I think my humble opinion, I think this part came up pretty good. And I think that most people probably won't notice it when they're first watching, but to toot my own horn, I think it's a really neat detail to have the camera move that way and the way stuff shifts and the camera unblurs, whatever. Anyways, next part, yeah. So Zorthleb in this part of the video, he kind of does this whole thing where he kind of, there's like weird blobs that expand out of him and cover the whole frame as things darken. Now, again, like everything else in this video, I drew each of those frames individually in Photoshop. I labeled them expand here in Photoshop. So it starts with, let me actually put Zorthleb in here. That should have been, I forget how I have things set up here. Whatever. Okay, ignore Zorthleb. So yeah, it's 12 frames I drew individually. And that's kind of the first part of this video that's like actually animated, I guess, and not just like things being like tweened across screen or like line art. I think it's a boiling lines effect people call it. It's the first instance where things are like frame by frame moving and like drawn out. And it's very simple, really. It goes by pretty quickly without you noticing, and it's really just blobs, but it's technically, yeah, it's the first part of the video where things actually have real animated movement. And I mean, yeah, in the video, it goes by pretty quickly, especially with how the screen darkens and everything, and how quick it happens. Again, small thing you probably won't notice. Yeah, so things are black here, and it builds up to this part of the video, which is not appearing in the preview. There it is. This part of the video is weird. This is probably another great example of me doing things in a weird way that's probably overcomplicated and way more difficult than it has to be, but I do it anyways. Give me a moment to open After Effects so I can show you what I mean. Okay, so I'm going to have to explain this quickly before my computer explodes from having Premiere and After Effects and OBS open all at the same time. But anyways, so as you notice in this part of the video, there's the background, right, with the background with all the eyes moving and stuff, and there's a monster in the foreground, zooms in, whatever, there's weird sounding music. The background is initially made up from this on the left. I think that was not actually the original clip. I think it should be, I have things organized so weird here. That's not it. Right here. Okay. So this is the other sequence that I have, and the background is made up of originally this, where it's just a bunch of eyes here, and it's kind of like looking around. And I exported this video as an MP4, whatever. It goes on for a minute. And then I could have just left at that, really. But for some reason, and I probably didn't have to do this, but I opened it in After Effects. And keep in mind, this is like the second time in my life that I've ever used After Effects. I had the original video. I mapped it to the inside of a cylinder, made the cylinder really big, and then made it spin. And then to sell the effect, which is, I mean, I get it isn't that overcomplicated. Whenever I say map out to the inside of a cylinder, it sounds weird, but it's not that complicated. It may be unnecessary. It probably is. Regardless, there's this clip. It's exported out, this part of the video, and then that's put into Premiere in this part of the video. And then that's basically it. It's actually, well, it's two clips of that video overlaid on top of each other with some weird distortion to make it even more confusing to look at. And that's basically it. All the sounds are taken from freesound.org. I got some weird like droning sound and some like ambient build up, whatever, and I found some weird audio. This guy playing a violin that was already like distorted for some reason, and I listened to it and I was like, that sounds weird and creepy. So I put it in the video. So after this part where this unnamed demon, whoever this is in this whatever hellscape, after that Claire wakes up, and again, like everything else, drawn in Photoshop, brought into Premiere. And this part of the video is probably, again, I guess the second time things are animated frame by frame. And again, yeah, it's all I did in Photoshop, and you can see it here. Each frame is just a layer group. And then, yeah, frame 5 freezes. I redraw frame 5 for 3 times. And then within, yeah, frame 5 is just kind of held as it flickers between these different like redrawings of that 5th frame. And then as Claire's face moves in the video, those are, again, all just individual frames that I exported out. And the face just kind of moves to look at Zorthelheb, who is also part of this Photoshop file, who also just kind of flickers in place. And yeah, that's the following part. It's just, it cuts to Zorthelheb, who looks at her, again, in Photoshop. I'll have all the frames here. And I'm just kind of, well, I'm missing his eyes. There's his eyes. Yeah, and then frames where he looks happy. Cut to Claire. I have no idea where the frames for this part of the video are on my computer. They're probably somewhere. And then yeah, it holds on her. She smiles, and then the video ends. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. I mean, again, it's not the most. A lot of people have been telling me like, "Oh, Dylan, this is awesome. This is so great," and I'm proud of that it came out so good. But I think also at the end of the day, I think showing this video, I think it also kind of exposes that what I made is also, it's not hard for other people to do this too. It really just takes some technical know-how and just a little bit of artistic talent. Maybe this is dumb for me to say. I think maybe this is actually not hard, not easy to do at all. But I think I mean, yeah, I guess for how janky I did things, for how overcomplicated I made it, I think this video did turn out pretty good, disregarding my ineptitude or whatever. I don't know if anything what I just said, it made any sense. I was just kind of just weird word vomit. I didn't really plan for this part of the video. I had the whole intro kind of planned out in my head, but the ending was just totally kind of blank for me. So I mean, yeah. Anyways, I guess this is the end of the behind the scenes walkthrough, whatever this is, of how I made the video. Yeah, maybe you learned something, maybe you didn't. Maybe you learned how not to do things, which that seems pretty likely. Yeah. As for the future of Zorthelheb and Claire, I'm probably going to do more stuff for them. I already kind of have some ideas sinking in my head of how it would be if I were to make another animated short and put on YouTube again. I made some concepts for like what Zorthelheb's siblings can look like. You're probably going to see more of them, especially a lot more of them, in Art Fight next year, just because that's when I really get to drawing a lot. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, I guess. Bye.